Justice Theron, Judge of the Constitutional Court of South Africa. Now, tonight's seminar is part of the Women's Seminar Series that the Bridge Group is running in conjunction with the General Counsel of the Bar and Advocates for Transformation. And we do that, we run the series of seminars under the banner of the 100 More campaign. The 100 More campaign, as you know, is serves to mark 100 years since women were permitted entry into the legal profession through a whole range of events which are being held over a period of time. And really the idea is to celebrate what women have achieved in law, to acknowledge also the diversity of the paths that women have taken, to support and inspire each other, and to accelerate the progress of women in law. So that's really what the campaign is seeking to do, and we try to contribute to that through our seminar series. Now, Justice Theron has a BA and an LLB degree from KwaZulu-Natal University. She also has an LLM from Georgetown University in the United States, where she studied as a Fulbright scholar. Justice Theron was first appointed to the bench in 1999, when she was the first Black woman to sit on the KwaZulu-Natal High Court bench. She was at the time 32, and then also the youngest person in South Africa to be appointed as a judge. Justice Theron. Justice Theron was then appointed to the SCA in 2010. And then to the Constitutional Court in 2017. What is striking about Justice Theron's jurisprudence is that there's been a consistent commitment to progressing and enhancing and developing the rights of women in many of her judgments. So, for example, one of the highlights, I think, is the Gumede judgment, which was penned at the High Court stage, where women in customary marriages were, it was recognized that they're effectively married in community of property and therefore entitled to those rights and benefits. And there are many others, but that's a striking feature of Justice Theron's jurisprudence. And so it's so fitting to have you here this evening, and we are so very honored that you were able to join us this evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barnes. Can I just ask, I know that there's some people will join virtually. Would it be better if I am seated or standing?
No, seated will be better. It's directly facing to you. Can I just say to the people online, welcome. Unfortunately, it's going to be a little bit difficult if you have questions. Please don't input them into the chat function. If you do have questions, particularly towards the end, just raise your hand. I will then take a note of your hand and then invite you to speak when appropriate. But other than that, there's no other protocol.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Barnes, for the introduction. And we must acknowledge the leader of the GCB as well, who is here. And if you'll indulge me, I have a special guest, Professor Claudio Marumo. He is an associate professor at Notre Dame University Law School, and just returned from the USA, but also a South African and an admitted attorney.
Thank you.
I'm very pleased to be here today to celebrate how far women have come in law. The 10th of April this year marks 100 years since the Women Legal Practitioners Act was adopted, which allowed women to be admitted into the legal profession. And as you may know, and the story's been told, Mahatma Gandhi was the first attorney to register a woman as an article clerk. And when she tried to register her articles of clerkship with the Law Society, her application was rejected on the basis that a woman could not practice as an attorney. Not too long ago, but she went to court, and the Transvaal Supreme Court ruled that women were not included as persons as defined in the Act, and could not practice. So I'm not sure what we were. Maybe we were just perpetual. Maybe we were just perpetual children, as some of the Act saw us as minors. And In 1912, Madeleine Hookey in Cape Town applied to be admitted as an attorney. When the Law Society refused to admit her, the matter went to court, and it said that a woman should not appear as an advocate on behalf of another person. So we have the person coming into effect again. And how do we say who's a person? But the judge also said that a woman should cloud themselves in modesty. 100 years later, I can't tell you what that means. Maybe we're immodest, or maybe the profession was immodest, and it was only seen that men should be engaged in an immodest profession. Maybe we've made it modest really since we joined. And the judge also said, if you look at Roman law, and this is where interpretation comes in and how we all interpret in our own way, it says, it was clear, there was no doubt, if you look at Roman law, then the practice of an attorney was the exclusive preserve of men. And maybe even more shocking after that, the then Chief Justice de Villiers, in an article, and it's there in the South African Law Journal, you can go look at it, he wrote that a woman's entrance into the profession was incompatible with the idea of motherhood. I've got children, so I don't know what he based his conclusion on. And he said, only when a woman was incapable of exercising the functions of motherhood should she be allowed to enter into the legal profession. Wow. So obviously there was something wrong with the legal profession. So only people who couldn't have children or people who were immodest were then at that stage practicing. I think we've done a lot for the advancement of the profession. But 1923 put an end to the legal imposition of gender discrimination. But that was only the start of our journey. That was the start of our journey to an equitable legal profession that truly represents South Africa. And we are still on the journey. And more so, I would say, in the advocate's profession. I became an advocate in KwaZulu-Natal since such a long time ago, 1990. And the landscape was very different from what it is today. Magistrates and judges were not used to people who look like me appearing in their courts. And I was disadvantaged on two grounds. I was a woman. They were not used to women. They were not used to Black women. So a lot of them didn't know how to relate to me, how to deal with me. And I'm not sure if you still have the practice, but you have to go introduce yourself to the magistrate before you appear for the first time. So I went to introduce myself. And as you know, my surname was Theron. Some people say Tron. And he looked at me up and down and he was totally confused. A brain Tron. That was the only word that could come out of his mouth. Like, you know, you just, I felt, in that time, I almost felt like an alien because it's like your surname doesn't belong to you. You are a woman. There shouldn't be women in a male-dominated profession, and you're Black. So it's like he really was so confused. I think it was a bad start to his morning. And there would be times where people would brief me on the basis of my surname. And then suddenly the matter would get settled when they would find out that this was actually a brain Tron. We used to have an inspecting judge, and every year he would send the annual report to all the judges. And every year he would put the same message in the report. He says, you know, Tron, I think we related. I was almost tempted to write back to him to say, this is the brown one. My gender and my race has affected how I've been treated in the legal profession. And I saw a sign that said, just a few days ago, it says, you're strong after having been through difficulties. So you can imagine how strong I am. So sometimes we welcome the obstacles, we welcome the the challenges, because it builds you into the person that you become. I was the first Black woman judge in KwaZulu-Natal. I was a member of the bar, and I think one of the first people, or there were a few others because at that time we were dealing with transformation, was appointed to the bench, not having taken silk. Not all my brothers were happy, both at the bar, at the sidebar, and on the bench, because it was just not what we were used to. Same like what Lord de Villiers said, we're just not used to women as advocates and women representing other people. What is the world becoming? And people felt so entitled to their positions and to their views that there was no shame for them to express it, even in the media. Even the judges, the senior judges, when I was appointed, were skeptical. And can you imagine reading about yourself in the newspaper, and a few days later you're reporting for duty with those same people? The leader of the please can I have some water? The leader of the judiciary at the time in KZN, in I think what was intended to be some sort of backhanded compliment. This was reported in the Sunday Times. And he said, well, at least she has potential. And I just jumped further ahead, 10 years later. I served 10 years as a High Court judge. And let me preface this by saying that what I'm going to say now, I say not to cast aspersions on any organization that may not have supported me. I say a thank you just to show the kind of obstacles that I had to overcome to get to where I am today. When I was nominated for appointment to the ACA, and this, take note, is after I'd served 10 years as a judge of the Durban High Court, in the KZN High Court, after I'd acted at the ACA for almost 2 years. I was not supported by my own bar, the KZN bar, and by the Cape bar. The one complaint is that I had lacked sufficient experience. Now, this is after 10 years on the bench. And if you look at history, you will see there are people prior to that who had less experience, who had been appointed already before me to the ACA. The other was that I had not dealt with sufficiently complex matters at the High Court that could have prepared me for the ACA. And I think there was a practice at that time where the draft report gets circulated before the report gets sent to the JSC. And obviously, people who knew better commented on the draft report. So the report that was eventually sent to the JSC accurately reflected these were facts. By that time, I'd already written 2 seminal judgments that had been confirmed by the Constitutional Court, one of which was Gumede. And the author of the memo to the JSC was a silk then himself. At the time of penning that, was currently appearing before me in a complex matter where all 4 parties had instructed silks. And I say this only because sometimes our inherent bias comes to the fore without us even knowing it, without us recognizing it. So the factual situation was very different to what the KZN bar was saying in their report. But obviously there was a male colleague that they were supporting. So they were blinded by that. And I think maybe they had some of the vision of that Lord de Villiers had at that stage, that, you know, this is really, really the preserve of women, the preserve of men. And I raise that to create awareness and for us to ask ourselves, when we make decisions as to who to support, who to nominate, who to brief, is there an inherent bias towards men? Is there an inherent bias towards women? And if there is, we can only overcome it when we recognize it. I was appointed as a judge not too long ago. Some of you might think it's too long because y'all were little toddlers at the time. But there was no washroom facilities for women judges. There was a passage as you approached it on the left. There was a sign with males that says judges, and a sign with a female that says secretaries. And I didn't know where to go. I almost made a little compartment for me there in between. But I thought I wouldn't embarrass my male colleagues anymore by trying to go to the bathroom with them, use the same bathroom as they did. But for years, and until I left that court, that is how the situation was. But you know what? I never thought about it, because we also have to pick our battles. And I said, you know, I'm 32 years old. I had been at the bar for just over 10 years. I got bigger battles to fight. Let me fight those battles. Let me fight those battles with the advocates or senior counsel. And there were a few of them who thought they could undermine me in court or thought they could show me up. So I said, that's the bigger battle for me to fight. Where I go wash my hands is a smaller battle. And I hope it's changed since then. And I've often been subjected to stereotyping. You know, all of us, we drive these fancy German cars, and when you're driving 120, it feels like you're going 80. So when you're deep in thought, sometimes you can easily go to 130. I hope it's not being recorded. Or So I had been stopped, and the traffic officer asked, okay, so what do you do? And I just said, no, I'm a judge. Looked at me, he says, what, a judge of beauty pageants? It never entered his mind that I could be a judge of anything else. I mean, what else can a woman be a judge of except beauty pageants? And I've often had the experience where somebody would be talking to me about a judge, and it's not a judge, but maybe an attorney or advocate, and they will refer to the male judge by Judge so-and-so, and continuously call me Leona. Now, yes, there are people who can call me Leona because of the kind of relationship they have with me, but they assume because I'm a woman, they don't need to give me the same deference or respect that you might give to a male colleague. All of that had the result in making me work twice as hard as any male I came across, particularly white males, because they were seen to be superior and you were looked down upon. And every day had to summon the courage to make sure that I'm taken seriously. I had to rise above the discrimination and the limitations that other people would impose upon me. Because they would look at me and say, this person, well, we don't think it's going to amount to much. And I had to show them that they were wrong. And my lesson to whoever finds themselves in that position is never give up. Never give up. Never, if somebody tells you you can't do it, then you do it twice. You work twice as hard to do it, just to prove that you can. And my story as a woman in this profession is no different from the stories of many other women who were in the profession at the same time. The odds were stacked against us. As recently as 2005, the Commission on Gender Equality conducted research, and they said there was a blatant gender bias in the legal profession. They spoke of negative attitudes of male lawyers, towards their female counterparts, women not taken as seriously, not accepted as equals, and still having an all-boys club. I recall earlier interviews of the JSC. We had a candidate who had made herself available for appointment on the Constitutional Court. She had also been Dean of the University of Cape Town, but she was based in New York at the time. And the commission was obviously impressed with her. And one of the commissioners asked, she was based in New York at the time, what could we do as South Africa to entice her to return and to make a contribution here? And then somebody, a commissioner, piped up and said, let's get our boyfriend here. And this is during the interviews, and nobody intervened to say that kind of remark is inappropriate. And these are instances that have happened in the last 10 or 20 years. So the gender bias is still there. And it's for each of us to recognize it and to do something about it. Also at the JSC, an openly gay judge had made herself available for higher appointment. And one of the shocking questions she was asked at her interview was, how do her male colleagues relate to her? I've never heard anyone being asked that question before then and since then. And her response was that, you know, she got along with all of them and none of them appeared to be sexist. And then one commissioner flippantly said, oh, sexy or sexist? And you will recall recently the interview of the Deputy Chief Justice. She was also being asked about being a woman, and she said, you know, I'm not good because I'm a woman. I'm a good woman judge. And I think as women and as females in the profession, we need to claim our place. And we need to say that we're here because we're advocates, and we're good advocates, and we're good female advocates. Now, we've come a long, long way since 1994. In 1994, there were 150 judges in the country, only 2 women. Judge Leonora van den Heever and Judge Jeanette Traverso. Can you imagine the whole of South Africa, 2 women judges? We currently have 253 judges in South Africa, and almost half of them are women, which is great progress. So we have 113 women judges, and we have a Deputy Chief Justice. Hopefully soon we'll have a woman Chief Justice, and she'll be leading the judiciary. And we also have 4 female justices at the highest court in our land. So our landscape is changing. Our landscape is promising. Many more women attorneys. Advocates, we don't see the women that much, and especially not in the senior courts, like in the Supreme Court of Appeal and in the Constitutional Court. And we need to address why not? And we need to look at means to say, what can we do to make positive changes in that regard? And we know about the all boys clubs. We know about the networking and the all boys networking, the relationships, clients, colleagues going for drinks. And, you know, I don't know all this new language. So they say more FaceTime. So I don't know if that's just FaceTime, what it means, but I think it means more time to socialize, more time to network. And with women still being primary caregivers at home, going on maintenance, maternity leave, and that kind of thing. It's you do get a system that could favor men. And I thought, to sound smart, I'll just refer to one case of the Constitutional Court, Brink versus Kitsoff, where we recognize the ongoing impact of gender discrimination. And I'll say this from the quote: although in our society discrimination on grounds of sex has not been as visible nor as widely condemned as discrimination on the grounds of race, it has nevertheless resulted in deep patterns of disadvantage. These patterns of disadvantage are particularly acute. The case, I thought that was exclamations and people agreeing with me. I was happy with that. These patterns of disadvantage are particularly acute in the case of Black women, as race and gender discrimination overlap. That all such discrimination needs to be eradicated from our society is a key message from the Constitution. Now, what about the way forward? I have a few ideas, and I'm sure you're implementing most of them. We need to address harassment and discrimination. It's topics that we sometimes don't want to talk about, we don't want to acknowledge, but they might be there. And if they are there, we must look at it. I'm very proud to say one of the first things that I did, I'm generally a very busybody. As a junior member of the Durban Bar, we used to rely on pro deos. Is there still pro deos nowadays? No, it used to be 300 Rand a day for a fee. But we used to look forward to this. And then we said, no, there's a skewed briefing pattern in this pro deos. And maybe because I was so junior and I didn't have a lot of work, I did a data analysis covering a 3-year period of the briefing patterns and how pro deos were allocated. And it showed the skewed allocation. And it resulted in me also getting a little bit more work, which I'm happy about. But we need statistics, we need analysis. We don't only need empty talk. We need mentorship programs, we need sponsorship programs. We need people who's going to take your hand and lead you. We need people who's going to say, you know, for the first 6 months, we're going to give you a remission on your fees, on your subscriptions, on your rent. We need support. We need leadership development. We need to plan for the future. And importantly, we need bias training so that we can identify if we have inherent biases. We need networking opportunities. We need opportunities to take a selfie with the judge afterwards and we can put on our social media platform and things like that. So I'll be available. We need to engage with our male colleagues. We need to engage with our male allies. We need to learn from them because they've been around longer than us, most of them. Sometimes they might know a little bit more than us. So we need to learn from them. I'll be the first to admit, there were not many women around as judges when I became a judge. So who did I learn from? I learned from our male colleagues. And I paid tribute to all of the KZN judges that were there, those who were appointed before 1994, those appointed after 1994, because all of them helped contribute to make me the judge I am today. But it was also at my request that I went to them to ask, to seek knowledge. There was never a stupid question. There never is a stupid question. I went to them, I realized they have the knowledge, they have the experience, and I learned from them. We need to understand culture. We need to understand each other's culture. We need to exchange. We need to have diversity programs. We need to understand each other better. If we're going to live together, work together, it's better when we understand each other. And my final pointer, and this is so important, as women, we need to support each other. I cannot stress this enough. And I think it's very, very long overdue for me to pay tribute to an advocate, a senior advocate, who has supported me. I hope she's joined. I invited her to join. Her name is Pingla Hemraj. I think she's also associate membership.
She's online.
She's online. Hello, Pingla. And she was one of the first people who sought me out when I not even when I was an advocate, when I was a pupil, she sought me out. I think you could count the number of advocates at the Durban Bar on one hand when I became an advocate. She gave me advice on courtroom decorum. She literally showed me the way around the magistrate's court, which is a maze. It's a maze for a new attorney, I think, or for an article clerk to start. You need somebody who's holding your hand to show you this is the chief magistrate's office. That's the regional magistrate's office. There you don't go before Hoppus 8. If you need a senior public prosecutor, you're going to find somebody there in that corner. And this one is very helpful. If a docket is lost, then you go there. But you need somebody, and she showed me that. When I was appointed as a judge, she came to my chambers and she said, Leona, now, okay, black robes, civil trial, red robes, criminal trial. Black, it's easy. Almost any lipstick goes with black. Let's take the red robes and go see which lipstick goes with the red robes. There's one incident that I recall with humor. And I don't know if this is still around, but you know, the senior advocates, when they take you for lunch, they're supposed to pay. Is it still so? They must just take them for lunch more often. So she had taken us juniors for dinner. And the bar then wasn't in quite the best place, the best located part of Durban. And we'd gone for dinner somewhere close to the bar. As we were leaving, we heard gunshots, and us youngsters were keen to look. She said, keep walking, look straight. Better to be counsel than a witness. She said, yeah, so when that call comes to brief you on Monday, after whoever's been locked up for the weekend, you're not going to say, well, I actually witnessed it, so I can't accept the brief. So she said, I've never forgotten that. So you also, some advice, so better to be counsel than a witness. So better to be called as counsel than to be called as a witness. Witness fees are not very high anyway. And perhaps I think it's also fitting just to give a little bit of background on Advocate Pingla Hemraj. She took silk in 2000. As far as I can recall, the only other black female to have taken silk before her was Nelly Kassim, making her, I think, the second most senior black woman silk after Miss Kassim in the country. She was on the Marikana Commission. She's a past member of the Bar Council. And that's what I want to emphasize. It's about giving back. I come here today because I want to give back. I want to share. I want to tell my story. And we can all give back. We all have something to give. And I know we all want to give. We want to build others. So we must do that. And Pingla is just such an exemplary, she's such an example of somebody who has given so much. She's given of her time to the Bar Council. She sat on various committees. She seeks out women as her juniors particularly, and she builds them up. Often when I'm in Durban and she knows I'm coming, she'll say, can you come meet with the juniors? And because she's always building that network of juniors and empowering. So I know you'll join me today in saying, halala Pingla, halala. Now, we need change. And I'm eager to hear from you as well, what you think some of the priorities should be. We all have a role to play in addressing the challenges that face the profession. Change requires a long-term commitment, a continuous effort, and ongoing collaboration. And that's why I'm so happy about the collaboration tonight between the group, between the GCB and Advocates for Transformation. Progress will be gradual, but if we all do our part, we can achieve a more inclusive and a more just and a more equitable legal profession in South Africa. I consider myself to be blessed. I consider myself to be honored to serve this country at the highest court, of the land. And it's something I do with passion. It's something I do my best of every day. I give to every case. I say to my law clerks, I don't often like to use this word, but the male judges at the SCA use it so all the time, so I also just start using it. There's no piss willy matter that comes with the Constitutional Court. And I don't know what other word is more appropriate, but that's it. Like every case grasps us. Every case and people ask me, what's your best judgment? Nikita?
The most recent judge.
Yes, yes. My last judgment is always the best judgment that I've written. That's how I feel about my work. And that fire must always burn within you about your work. And not just about you and about your work. Extend it to your group, extend it to your community, extend it across South Africa. And I feel like I'm preaching now. And while we've celebrated so many achievements in South Africa since 1994, so many achievements for women, it's not enough. It's not enough to just say it's been 100 years, and I'm glad we're saying 100 more. I know we're not all going to be here for the next 100. But let's work towards creating a vision that we would like to see in 100 years. And if I can just say, as I conclude, and I wasn't going to say this, my father had a vision for me when I was 5 years old. We were living in Durban. My first language was English. My only language was English. The only university that would accept brown people at that time was in the Western Cape. The language there was Afrikaans. My father decided when I was 5 years old that I would go to university. He had no idea how he'd pay for me to go to university, but he decided that if I'm going to university, I must learn to speak Afrikaans. So he enrolled me at the age of 5 in the only Afrikaans medium school that there was in Durban for brown people. So that when I go to university, at the age of 18, after finishing matric, I'll be able to speak the language at university. And that was his vision. 5 years old. And that's part of the reason why I am where I am today, because of the vision that my father had. I'm sure I was not brilliant at that age. I'm sure I couldn't write or anything like that, or I wasn't giving legal arguments and stuff like that. But my father had the vision. So let us have a vision of where we want the profession to be in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, and let's work towards the vision. If we need to learn to speak Afrikaans to implement that vision, let's do it, because that's how we will achieve it. There are, like I said, many, many men who have positively influenced my career, and I pay tribute to them. The judges, my pupil master, I think he also got a shock when he got this name that Justice Theron's going to be your pupil. I was his first pupil. And there again, black young woman, how does he deal with me? But he was excellent. And at the end of my pupillage, he introduced me to his attorneys. He encouraged people to give me work. He used to come and check on me all the time. Even when I was at the SCA and he'd appeared there, I think he'd still come check on me to see that his people are still doing okay. So shout out to Stephen Mullins from the Durban Bar. Have good bonds between all of you, especially with the women. Support each other, whether they're your family, whether they're your friends, whether they're your colleagues, whether they're your mentors, whether they're your mentees. You should actually have compartments for all of them, because it makes you a richer, fuller person. And that's how we can empower each other, we uplift each other, we support each other, and we support each other's growth, so that you know that you're never alone. And when you have summited Kilimanjaro, like I did, When you reach the top of that mountain, you become a light and a star for others to follow. So in conclusion, I thank the Bridge Group of Advocates for inviting me in conjunction with the GCB and Advocates for Transformation. And thank you for the invitation. And I really enjoyed being here. I'm looking forward to taking those selfies.